August 27, 1875. Dawn breaks over San Francisco Bay. Near Meigs Wharf, a body floats face down in cold Pacific water. The man is 49 years old. Hours earlier, he controlled millions. Now he owns nothing. Everything signed away in a single night. His name is William Chapman Ralston. And 2 blocks from where his body will be pulled from the water, the largest hotel ever constructed in the western United States stands days away from completion. 7 stories tall, 755 rooms, 26 million bricks. A palace designed to prove that San Francisco belonged among the world's great cities. So what kills a dreamer before his dream completes? How does a building designed to announce permanence survive only 1 generation? This is the story of the Palace Hotel. If you enjoy deep explorations into the forgotten mansions and families that shaped the most extravagant era, please support this documentary by liking and subscribing. And if you have your own insights or stories about these estates, I'd love to read them. Now, let's step inside. The village had a Spanish name once, Yerba Buena, good herb. In 1848, fewer than 1,000 people lived there, scattered between the bay and low hills that caught fog like a net. Then James Marshall found gold 140 miles inland, at a sawmill owned by John Sutter, and everything changed in the time it takes a rumor to cross an ocean. By 1849, ships arrived daily. Captains sailed from New York, Boston, Liverpool, Shanghai. They carried men, mostly men, who believed in transformation. That you could remake yourself. That the past didn't matter. That California was the place where luck replaced lineage. They abandoned their ships in the harbor, crews deserting for the gold fields, and the city incorporated those abandoned hulls into wharves and buildings, pushing the waterfront deeper into the bay with each passing year. 25,000 people by 1849. Not a town. A fever. By 1860, 56,000. By 1870, 150,000. San Francisco became the financial capital of everything west of Chicago, a city that processed the wealth extracted from Sierra Nevada streams and Nevada silver veins. The money flowed through its banks. The ore arrived at its refineries. The stocks traded on its exchange. And the men who controlled that flow, the bankers, the mining barons, the merchants who supplied Virginia City with pickaxes and dynamite-built mansions on Nob Hill that announced their arrival into American aristocracy. But here's what the city lacked: a hotel that matched its ambitions. Paris had the Grand Hotel, 800 rooms arranged around a palatial courtyard, a building so vast it occupied an entire city block. New York had the Fifth Avenue Hotel with its hydraulic elevators and marble lobbies. London had Claridge's. These weren't just accommodations. They were cathedrals of civilization, places where power gathered and deals were made over brandy and velvet chairs. San Francisco had the Occidental, the Cosmopolitan, the Lick House, respectable, adequate, but nothing that could make a businessman from New York or London feel that the journey to the Pacific coast had delivered them to a place worthy of serious attention. This absence humiliated the city's elite. They traveled east and returned with stories of private bathrooms with hot water, of dining rooms that seated hundreds, of lobbies 3 stories tall where light fell through stained glass and reflected off Italian marble. Each story was a wound. The question forming in San Francisco by the early 1870s wasn't whether someone would build a grand hotel. The city had the wealth Comstock silver was still pouring into bank vaults by the ton. The question was, who had the audacity? And more important, who was willing to gamble everything on proving that San Francisco belonged in the company of the world's great cities? The answer came from a man who believed buildings could reshape reality. That architecture was argument. That if you constructed something magnificent enough, the world would have no choice but to acknowledge your legitimacy. He was right, and it killed him. William Chapman Ralston, arrived in San Francisco in 1854 with experience but no fortune. Born in Wellsville, Ohio in 1826, he'd spent years as a clerk on the steamships carrying gold seekers from Panama to California. The work taught him something fundamental. The real wealth wasn't in the gold fields. It was in moving people, supplying equipment, and managing money once someone struck it rich. 28 years old when he settled in San Francisco. Restless energy, outsized charm. The kind of man who made decisions in the time it took others to consider options. By 1864, he co-founded the Bank of California with Darius Ogden Mills, a Sacramento banker whose conservative reputation provided ballast to Ralston's aggressive instincts. Mills served as president, but everyone understood that Ralston officially the cashier controlled strategy. $2 million in initial capital. Immediate positioning as the premier financial institution west of Chicago. Ralston's method. Extend credit liberally to Nevada mining operations, accept mining stock as collateral, and end up owning properties outright when operations failed. Within 2 years, the Bank of California had become the engine of the entire Comstock region. But Ralston wasn't building a bank. He was building a city. In 1869, he financed the California Theater on Bush Street, 1,800 seats. Gilded boxes. Gaslit chandeliers that could compete with anything in New York. He invested in the Spring Valley Water Company that supplied the city's water. He backed the formation of the University of California at Berkeley. He funded the construction of New Montgomery Street, cutting a new thoroughfare through dense urban fabric south of Market Street. His personal estate reflected the same scale of ambition. Ralston Hall in Belmont, 25 miles south of the city. Italian villa style, marble imported from Carrara. Wood paneling from forests that had supplied European palaces. 14 acres of grounds requiring a permanent staff of gardeners. He built a reservoir in the hills above the property, an engineering project employing nearly 100 workers creating what locals called Water Dog Lake, just to supply his summer house with running water. His wife Elizabeth and their 4 children lived there year-round. Ralston divided his time between Belmont and the city, traveling the peninsula by private carriage, conducting business from a railroad car he'd customized with a desk and filing cabinets. By 1870, his financial empire seemed limitless. The Bank of California controlled stakes in Comstock mines, producing millions annually. Ralston's personal investments spanned shipping, water, real estate, and theater. He was, by every measure, a most powerful financier in California. And he was drowning in debt. The mathematics were simple but brutal. Ralston spent more than he earned. Not occasionally, constantly. Every civic project, every grand gesture, every marble statue and Italian fountain represented cash flowing out faster than silver flowing in. The bank's money and his personal fortune had become impossible to separate. When he needed capital for a new project, he borrowed against the bank's assets. When bank depositors demanded their money, he borrowed against mining stocks whose value existed more in hope than ore. It worked as long as the Comstock kept producing, as long as stock prices rose, as long as depositors believed in the permanence of the Bank of California. But by 1872, Ralston had conceived his most ambitious project yet. Not a theater or a water company or a university. Something larger. A hotel that would force the world to take San Francisco seriously. 7 stories tall. An entire city block. The finest hotel in the Western Hemisphere. Friends advised caution. Even Mills, his conservative partner, expressed concern about the scale and cost. But Ralston had spent 2 decades building on audacity, and every impossible project had succeeded because he refused to acknowledge the possibility of failure. Ground broke in July 1874 on a parcel bounded by Market, New Montgomery, Annie, and Jesse Streets. The site occupied 112,176 square feet, more than 2.5 acres, in the heart of the city's financial district. Ralston purchased the land in pieces, buying out individual property owners and negotiating with commercial tenants. Total cost for the land alone, roughly $1 million, equivalent to $25 million today. He hired architect John P. Gaynor, a 44-year-old Irish-born designer who'd made his reputation building commercial structures in downtown San Francisco. Gaynor's plans called for a building unlike anything the West had ever seen. 7 full stories plus a basement level, 755 guest rooms. A central courtyard rising the full height of the building and covered with a glass skylight spanning 84 feet by 144 feet. 4 hydraulic elevators called rising rooms, capable of carrying guests to the upper floors at 90 feet per minute. The scale demanded industrial logistics. Brick arrived by the million's final count would reach 26 million transported from kilns in Oakland and Contra Costa County on barges that crossed the bay daily. Indiana limestone for the exterior facades came by railroad, along with iron beams from eastern foundries. Glass from Belgium, packed in crates of sawdust. Marble from quarries in Vermont and Tennessee. A workforce assembled that would peak at more than 600 men during the summer of 1875. Stonemasons, many from Italy, who understood how to dress limestone blocks to architectural specifications. Carpenters from Scotland and England, who could execute the complex millwork required for door frames, window casings, and decorative molding. General laborers, mostly Irish and Chinese immigrants, who moved materials, mixed mortar, and built the wooden scaffolding that eventually covered the entire structure like an exoskeleton. Their names survive in payroll ledgers kept at the California Historical Society. Domenico Russo, master mason, 42, from Carrara. Thomas McKinnon, lead carpenter, 38, trained in Glasgow. Chun Wei, general labor, 27, arrived from Guangdong province 6 years earlier and worked on railroad construction before finding employment in San Francisco. Work continued 6 days a week, dawn to dusk, through fog and heat and the occasional winter rain that turned the construction site into a pit of mud and brick dust. The rhythm was industrial. Materials arrived on schedules tighter than passenger trains. Lumber from Oregon old-growth fir for framing clear vertical grain. Copper from Montana smelters, rolled in Philadelphia, shipped in sheets weighing 400 pounds each. Lead pipe for the hotel's plumbing system, miles of it, cast in sections and soldered on-site by specialized plumbers who worked in the basement while masons worked on the upper floors. Nothing improvised, nothing left to chance. Ralston visited the site daily, inspecting progress, questioning foremen, pushing for speed. The hotel was scheduled to open in the fall of 1875, 18 months after groundbreaking. An impossible timeline for a building of this scale. But Ralston believed momentum could overcome obstacles if you simply refused to slow down. By spring 1875, the structure stood complete to the 7th floor. The central courtyard's iron framework awaited installation of glass panels. Interior work had begun plasterers, painters, carpenters installing mahogany doors and window frames. From Market Street, the building's white limestone facade announced itself like a declaration. San Francisco had its palace. Underneath the achievement, pressure gathered. Stand in the grand court when it's finally complete, and the sensation is architectural vertigo. You're inside a building, but it feels like outdoors. Light falls from above through 28,000 square feet of glass, arranged in panels supported by an iron framework that spans 84 feet without interior columns. 7 stories of balconies ring the courtyard, each level fronted with cast iron railings painted white. Carriages could drive directly into this space, and they will pulling up beneath the skylight to discharge passengers who step from their coaches onto a floor of Vermont marble. Beautiful, yes, but step past the spectacle and examine the machine. The Palace Hotel isn't just a building. It's infrastructure at a scale that requires industrial systems to function. Start with water. The hotel maintains its own water supply. 5 artesian wells sunk deep into bedrock beneath the basement, each capable of delivering 28,000 gallons daily. Combined capacity, 140,000 gallons per day, stored in 4 massive cisterns built into the foundation. The wells feed not just faucets, but an entirely separate fire suppression system. A network of pipes running through every floor, terminating in standpipes and hose connections in every corridor. 7,000 feet of pipe. 700 fire hose nozzles. A system designed after the great fires that periodically swept through San Francisco's wooden neighborhoods, destroying blocks of buildings in hours. Power comes from the hotel's own gas plant. A separate building on the property manufactures illuminating gas from coal, feeding 1,500 gas fixtures throughout the hotel. Each guest room has at least 1 gas sconce. Public spaces, the grand court, the dining rooms, the ballrooms have dozens. The gas plant requires coal deliveries measured in tons, and a staff of engineers who work 24-hour shifts, maintaining pressure and ensuring continuous supply. Heating operates through a central system that would be revolutionary if it weren't so necessary. The basement contains massive furnaces, accounts vary, but at least 10 that burn coal to heat water that circulates through radiators in every guest room and public space. The coal arrives by the ton, stored in bunkers that occupy portions of the basement, and the furnaces require constant tending by a crew of firemen who shovel coal and clear ash in shifts around the clock. Descend into the basement and you discover a parallel city. Laundry rooms equipped with industrial-scale washing equipment. Storage rooms for linens measured by the thousands sheets, towels, tablecloths. Kitchens that occupy spaces larger than most San Francisco houses, outfitted with ranges capable of preparing hundreds of meals simultaneously. Ice rooms where blocks of ice harvested from Sierra lakes and transported by railroad are stored in sawdust. Wine cellars. Coal bunkers. Mechanical rooms containing the pumps and valves that control water pressure throughout the building. Staff circulation through the building operates along entirely separate paths from guests. Service staircases, narrow and unadorned, connect every floor. Service corridors allow maids, porters, and waiters to move between rooms without appearing in guest hallways. The separation is intentional and absolute. Guests should see marble and mahogany. They should never see the labor that maintains the illusion. Ralston hires an initial staff of approximately 400 people. This number will grow once the hotel opens fully. Maids, porters, cooks, waiters, laundresses, engineers, firemen, carpenters for ongoing maintenance, plumbers, gardeners for the interior courtyard's planned vegetation. Each position pays wages that range from $30 to $60 monthly for general labor, up to $150 for specialized positions like head chef or chief engineer. Do the mathematics. 400 staff at an average wage of $50 monthly, $20,000 in payroll. Add coal for heating and gas production, $3,000 monthly during winter, less in summer. Add food costs, linens, maintenance supplies, repairs. Monthly operational costs approach $30,000 before a single guest checks in, nearly $400,000 annually, equivalent to roughly $10 million today. And this assumes the hotel fills its rooms. 755 rooms. Rates planned at $2 to $5 per night, depending on size and amenities. Assume 60% occupancy, a generous estimate for even the finest hotels. That's 450 rooms occupied nightly, generating $1,350 to $2,250 in room revenue per day. Call it $2,000 average. 30 days, $60,000 in room revenue monthly. The hotel also plans revenue from its dining rooms, bars, and event spaces. But even generous estimates struggle to cover operational costs, let alone provide return on the construction investment. Ralston has spent approximately $5 million building the Palace Hotel equivalent to $140 million today. At typical return expectations of 6% annually, the hotel would need to generate $300,000 in profit yearly just to justify the investment. The numbers don't balance, not remotely. But Ralston isn't building the Palace Hotel to generate profit. He's building it to prove a point, that San Francisco belongs in the company of great cities, that Western civilization has moved west. That magnificence can be manufactured if you're willing to spend without limits. His friends see the problem. Mills, his banking partner, has grown increasingly concerned about the Bank of California's exposure to Ralston's various projects. The bank's ledgers show loans extended to enterprises that Ralston controls personally. Money flows from depositors' accounts into Nevada mines, San Francisco real estate, the Palace Hotel construction site. The lines between the bank's capital and Ralston's personal ventures have blurred into irrelevance. And in Nevada, the Comstock mines have begun showing troubling signs. Spring 1875. Virginia City, Nevada. 2,500 feet underground in the Consolidated Virginia Mine, workers hit a pocket of superheated water that floods the tunnel and kills 4 men. The accident suspends operations for weeks. When pumping resumes and mining restarts, the ore quality has declined. Still valuable, still worth extracting. But the spectacular yields of previous years are diminishing. The same story repeats across other Comstock properties. The Ophir mine reports lower grades. The Gould and Curry encounters flooding that requires expensive pumping equipment. The Belcher faces cave-ins that slow production. Individually, these are operational challenges. Collectively, they represent a trend that terrifies anyone holding significant positions in Comstock mining stocks. San Francisco Stock Exchange reflects the anxiety. Mining shares that had climbed steadily through 1873 and 1874 begin losing value. Not catastrophically, not yet, but enough that margin calls start arriving at brokerage houses. Investors who'd borrowed money to purchase shares now face demands for additional collateral as share prices decline. The Bank of California holds substantial positions in multiple Comstock mines. Some outright ownership of properties. More often, shares accepted as collateral for loans that seemed prudent when ore was rich and stock prices rising. As share values decline, the bank's actual capital base shrinks. Depositors' money remains constant. They expect to withdraw the full amount they deposited. But the assets backing those deposits have lost value. Ralston borrows more. From the bank, from personal loans. From selling shares and ventures he controls. He borrows to pay interest on previous loans. He borrows to continue construction at the Palace Hotel. He borrows to maintain his estate at Belmont and to fund the Spring Valley Water Company and to keep the California Theater operating. Each new loan assumes the future will provide. That Comstock ore will recover. That stock prices will rise. That the Palace Hotel will open and generate revenue and become the jewel that elevates everything else. Mills confronts him in June 1875. The bank's position has become untenable. Liabilities exceed assets in ways that can't be hidden much longer. If depositors lose confidence and begin withdrawing funds, the bank will collapse. Ralston responds the only way he knows: forward. The Palace Hotel will open in October. Advance reservations are already arriving. Important guests from New York, from Boston, from London. The opening will generate publicity that will restore confidence. Stock prices will recover. Nevada mines will hit new ore bodies. The mathematics will balance. But in late July, a rumor begins circulating. Small at first. Whispered in the financial district. The Bank of California is overextended. Ralston has used depositors' money to fund his own ventures. If you have an account, withdraw it now before it's too late. Rumors are architecture's opposite. Buildings take months to construct from millions of bricks. Rumors spread in hours from a single suspicion. On August 26, 1875, depositors form a line outside the Bank of California on California Street. By noon, the line stretches 2 blocks. By afternoon, the bank's cash reserves are depleted. Ralston goes to other banks, seeking emergency loans. No one will extend credit. By evening, the Bank of California suspends operations. That night, the bank's directors meet. They examine the books. What they discover is catastrophic. The bank owes depositors approximately $5 million. Its actual capital, after accounting for worthless mining stocks and uncollectible loans, is perhaps $2 million. The shortfall of $3 million represents an impossible gulf. No one has that kind of cash available. Even liquidating everything Ralston owns personally, Belmont, his San Francisco properties, his stakes in various companies, won't cover the deficit. The directors force Ralston to resign. Transfer all personal assets to the bank. Perhaps liquidation can return enough money to depositors that criminal charges can be avoided. Ralston signs the papers, hands over deeds, stock certificates, contracts. Everything he's built over 2 decades becomes bank property. He leaves the meeting around 2 a.m. on the morning of August 27th, goes to his San Francisco house on Pine Street, changes clothes. According to his coachman, he seems calm, almost relieved. At approximately 7 a.m., Ralston walks to the Neptune swimming baths at North Beach, a members-only facility where he swims regularly. He enters the water. A staff member later reports seeing him swimming steadily toward deeper water, his usual style, powerful strokes parallel to the shore. Then he stops. The staff member can't see clearly from shore. Perhaps Ralston is floating, resting, but the moment extends. Something is wrong. By the time they reach him with a boat, William Chapman Ralston is unconscious. They pull him from the water and attempt revival. A doctor is summoned. At 9:30 a.m., the doctor pronounces him dead. Heart failure, possibly brought on by cold water and exertion. Though other theories will circulate suicide, murder, accident for years afterward, he was 49 years old. The funeral procession 3 days later draws 50,000 people lining Market Street. 8,000 attend the public memorial service at the California Theater that Ralston had built 6 years earlier. Speakers call him the greatest builder San Francisco had ever known. His widow and 4 children mourn a man who gambled everything on impossible dreams and lost. 2 blocks from where his body was found, the Palace Hotel stands nearly complete. Workers continue installing gas fixtures and hanging draperies and polishing marble. The grand opening is scheduled for October 2nd. The hotel will open on schedule. Its creator will never walk through the grand court, never see the gas-lit chandeliers illuminate the interior, never watch the first carriages roll beneath the glass skylight to discharge passengers dressed in silk and wool. But the Palace Hotel opens anyway, because buildings, once started, acquire their own momentum. October 2nd, 1875. Evening. Market Street throngs with carriages. San Francisco society arrives in formal dress, men in dark suits and top hats, women in gowns that required weeks of dressmaking and cost more than most workers earned in 6 months. They pass through bronze doors into the grand court, and the sensation is precisely what Ralston had imagined: architectural vertigo. 7 stories of balconies rising into darkness. Gaslight reflected off white marble floors. The ceiling 84 feet above and visible beyond the glow of chandeliers. Carriages rolling into the space and depositing passengers who step onto marble that came from Vermont quarries and was shaped by Italian masons and polished by men whose names survive only in payroll records. The building itself occupies 112,176 square feet, 2.5 acres, compressed into 7 vertical floors. The structure measures 275 feet along Market Street, 350 feet along New Montgomery, wrapping around that central courtyard that rises the full height of the building like an atrium carved from air and light. Walk through those bronze doors, and a bellman in burgundy livery intercepts you. Your luggage trunks that traveled by railroad from New York or steamship from London disappears into service corridors. You're guided not to stairs, but to one of 4 rising rooms, hydraulic elevators encased in walnut and brass. The operator, dressed identically to the bellman, closes the iron gate and pulls a lever. The floor rises beneath you at 90 feet per minute, smooth, almost silent. Revolutionary technology that most guests have never experienced. The elevators deliver you to one of 7 floors, each containing approximately 108 rooms arranged along corridors that run the building's perimeter. The corridors themselves are architectural statements, 12 feet wide, 14 feet tall, lit by gas sconces every 15 feet. Brussels carpet in burgundy and gold patterns. Mahogany wainscoting rising 5 feet from marble floors. Not service hallways, processional spaces. Your room, let's say you've reserved a standard single on the 4th floor. Room 412 measures approximately 200 square feet, not large by modern standards. But examine what's included. A brass bed with mattress, stuffed with horsehair and cotton, dressed in Irish linen sheets changed daily. A wardrobe of California redwood, fitted with cedar lining to discourage moths. A writing desk with leather top and gas lamp designed for reading. A washstand with porcelain basin and pitcher hot water, delivered twice daily by staff, who knock and enter only when invited. A mirror, gilt-framed, measuring 4 feet tall. Curtains of velvet in deep red, thick enough to block morning light completely. But here's what separates the palace from ordinary hotels. The bathroom. Not every room has one, only the suites and premium rooms. But the 4th floor features 2 shared bathrooms, serving approximately 30 rooms. Each bathroom contains a cast iron tub large enough for a full-length soak, supplied with hot and cold running water from pipes that connect to the basement boiler system. The hot water arrives genuinely hot 140 degrees, requiring careful mixing with cold to avoid scalding. Beside the tub, a water closet, a modern flush toilet that most Americans have never seen, let alone used. Pull the chain and water rushes from an overhead tank. The waste disappears into pipes that connect to the city's sewer system. For 1875, this is science fiction-made plumbing. The suites, approximately 80 of them, occupy premium positions overlooking Market Street or facing the interior courtyard. A standard suite combines 2 rooms, a parlor of approximately 250 square feet and a bedroom of 200 square feet, connected by double doors. Total, 450 square feet of private space. The parlor includes a sofa upholstered in damask, 2 armchairs, a dining table that seats 4, a sideboard for serving meals, and a fireplace. Yes, a working fireplace on the 4th floor of a hotel. The chimneys rise through all 7 floors, venting into a forest of terracotta chimney pots on the roof. Coal arrives via service corridors, delivered by staff, who restock each room's coal scuttle nightly. The bedroom features a double bed, a luxury most Americans never experience, as single beds remain standard even for married couples again dressed in Irish linen. A second wardrobe, a dressing table with mirror, and here, a private bathroom. The premium suites, approximately 20 of them, expand to 3 or 4 rooms, totaling up to 800 square feet. Multiple bedrooms, separate dining room, private bath with both tub and shower, the shower being an experimental luxury that delivers hot water through a perforated rosette mounted on the wall. Guests can stand beneath falling water, a sensation that feels simultaneously decadent and hygienic. These premium suites rent for $5 per night, equivalent to $140 today, which sounds reasonable until you remember that in 1875, the average American worker earned approximately $400 per year. A single night in a premium Palace Hotel suite costs more than a week's wages for most Americans. The standard rooms rent for $2 per night, still expensive, still beyond the reach of ordinary travelers. The Palace Hotel isn't for ordinary travelers. It's for the class of people who can afford to travel for pleasure rather than necessity. Business magnates, shipping owners, mining barons, European aristocrats touring America. The kind of guests who arrive with servants who get separate, smaller rooms on the upper floors at reduced rates. But here's what every guest, regardless of room quality, experiences. Service at a scale that transforms hospitality into performance art. Ring the bell in your room, and a maid appears within minutes. Need fresh towels? They arrive. Want your boots polished? Leave them outside your door. Before sleeping, and they return by morning, shine to mirror finish. Hungry between meal times? The hotel maintains a kitchen that operates 24 hours daily. Order food at midnight, and it arrives on a silver tray, delivered by a waiter in formal dress, who sets up a temporary table in your room, arranges the dishes, and withdraws silently. The main dining room occupies a portion of the ground floor adjacent to the grand court. High ceilings. Chandeliers holding 200 gas flames each. Tables dressed in white linen, set with silver cutlery and crystal glasses. The menu features French cuisine prepared by chefs recruited from New York and Paris. Oysters on ice. Terrapin soup. Roasted duck with orange sauce. Beef Wellington. Chocolate soufflé. Wine imported from France. Champagne from Reims. Brandy aged 30 years in oak casks. A full dinner costs approximately $1.50, half a day's wages for a working man, served to people for whom that amount is pocket change. The Palace Hotel is, by every measure, the finest hotel in the Western Hemisphere. It's larger than any hotel in New York, more technologically advanced than anything in Chicago, designed with a sophistication that rivals the grand hotels of Europe. And it's an orphan. Sharon takes control. William Sharon, the man Ralston had sent to Virginia City years earlier to manage the Bank of California as Nevada interests. Sharon had built his own fortune while serving Ralston's interests, and now he steps forward to ensure the Palace Hotel's completion and opening, not from charity, from calculation. Sharon understands what Ralston understood. The Palace Hotel is infrastructure. It's the physical proof that San Francisco belongs in conversations about world-class cities. The hotel as ownership transfers to a consortium of investors who purchase it from the Bank of California as receivers for approximately $3.5 million, a significant discount from the $5 million construction cost. Sharon becomes managing director. He hires Warren Leland, an experienced hotelier from New York, as manager. Leland had operated the Metropolitan Hotel in New York City and understands both the logistics of managing a large property and the psychology of wealthy guests. Initial reviews are ecstatic. Newspapers in San Francisco, New York, and London describe the Palace Hotel in superlatives. The most magnificent hotel structure in the world, declares one San Francisco publication. A palace indeed, writes a New York correspondent. Guests arrive from across the country and from Europe, drawn by reports of unprecedented luxury. But examine the actual numbers. 755 rooms. Even in the first enthusiastic months, occupancy hovers around 50%. Against operational costs approaching $30,000 monthly, the hotel generates approximately $25,000 in monthly profit. Annually, $300,000, which sounds substantial until you remember the construction cost was $5 million and the consortium purchased it for $3.5 million. A 6% annual return on a $3.5 million investment would require $210,000 in profit. The palace is generating that. Barely. This assumes everything continues perfectly. No major repairs. No economic downturns that reduce travel. No competition from newer hotels. No increases in coal prices or staff wages or insurance costs. The Palace Hotel functions, in other words, on margins so thin and any significant disruption threatens its viability. But for a decade, it works. The hotel becomes exactly what Ralston envisioned, the gathering place for San Francisco's elite and visiting dignitaries. Presidents stay at the palace. Ulysses S. Grant in 1879, Benjamin Harrison in 1891, William McKinley in 1901, European nobility, industrial barons, famous performers appearing at San Francisco theaters. Anyone who matters stays at the palace. The Grand Court becomes famous for its carriages rolling in beneath the skylight. Guests never step outside from the moment their coach enters until they reach their rooms. The hydraulic elevators, rising rooms, become tourist attractions themselves. The dining rooms serve French cuisine on china custom-made in Europe with the hotel's crest. The bars stock spirits from around the world. And in the basement, the invisible city works. Maids strip beds and wash linens. Cooks prepare hundreds of meals daily. Engineers tend furnaces. Carpenters make repairs. Plumbers fix leaks. Coal arrives by the ton. Wood for the kitchen stoves, ice from the Sierra Nevada, meat from local butchers, vegetables from farms in the valleys south of the city. The hotel employs more than 400 people by the late 1880s. Their shifts rotate around the clock. The palace never sleeps. The gas lights never fully extinguish. The furnaces never cool. The machine runs continuously, burning coal and consuming labor and generating barely enough revenue to sustain itself. But it's beautiful, and beauty creates its own justification. Until the mathematics change. By 1900, the Palace Hotel is 25 years old. A quarter-century of continuous operation has taken its toll. The white limestone facade is stained by San Francisco's coal smoke and salt air. The marble floors show wear patterns where millions of footsteps have polished paths between the entrance and the elevators. The mechanical systems revolutionary in 1875 are outdated by 1900. Competition has arrived. The Grand Hotel on Market Street opens in 1890 with 300 rooms and modern amenities. The St. Francis Hotel begins construction in 1903 on Union Square, designed from the start with electric lights and modern plumbing systems that surpass the palace as converted gas fixtures and aging pipes. The palace undertakes renovations. Electric lights replace gas fixtures throughout the building, a conversion that requires rewiring every floor and costs approximately $200,000. New furniture, fresh paint, updated carpets. But these are cosmetic improvements. The fundamental infrastructure, the plumbing, the heating system, the structure itself, remains essentially unchanged from 1875. And there's another problem: fire. San Francisco has experienced numerous fires over the decades. The city's wooden buildings burn easily, and despite improved fire departments and better equipment, fires remain a constant threat. The Palace Hotel was designed with fire suppression as a priority. Those 7,000 feet of pipe, 700 hose connections, 140,000 gallons of water stored in basement cisterns. But the system assumed San Francisco's water mains remain functional, that firefighters can connect to hydrants and provide additional pressure, that the hotel's own pumps can draw water from city mains if the internal supply is exhausted. On April 18, 1906, at 5:12 a.m., an earthquake strikes San Francisco with a magnitude later estimated at 7.9. The temblor lasts approximately 1 minute. In that minute, buildings collapse, gas lines rupture, and water mains shatter throughout the city. The Palace Hotel survives the earthquake itself. The building's thick walls and substantial foundation prevent structural collapse. Guest rooms suffer broken windows, fallen plaster, toppled furniture, but the building stands. In the basement, however, the earthquake has cracked the water cisterns. The hotel's 140,000-gallon internal water supply is draining into the foundation. And throughout the city, ruptured gas lines are igniting fires. By 6 a.m., dozens of fires burn across San Francisco. Fire departments respond, but discover water pressure is zero. The earthquake destroyed water mains throughout the city. Hydrants deliver nothing. Firefighters watch buildings burn, helpless without water. The Palace Hotel's management makes a decision. They have water, what remains in the cisterns, before they fully drain. They have hoses and pumps. They will defend the hotel. Staff organize bucket brigades. They soak curtains and carpets. They station men with hoses on every floor, watching for embers. As fires spread through downtown San Francisco, consuming block after block, the Palace Hotel stands as a wet fortress surrounded by flame. For nearly 24 hours, it works. Fires approach from the south and west. Buildings across the street ignite. The heat becomes intense enough to crack windows. But the staff keeps water flowing. They spray the exterior walls. They extinguish embers that land on the roof. By the afternoon of April 19th, the water runs out. The fires burning in surrounding buildings have created a heat so intense that the Palace Hotel's exterior walls themselves begin to smoke. The limestone, subjected to temperatures exceeding 1,500 degrees, begins to crack. Windows shatter from thermal shock. And then the interior woodwork door frames, window casings, furniture, the mahogany that Ralston had imported from forests around the world, begins to smolder. At approximately 3 p.m. on April 19th, the Palace Hotel ignites. Not from external flames jumping the street, but from the radiant heat that has turned the interior into an oven. The building burns from inside. The Grand Court's glass skylight shatters. The iron framework, heated red hot, begins to sag and twist. The balcony's cast iron railings melt. 7 stories of rooms, each filled with furniture and curtains and carpets and bedding, become fuel. The fires burn so hot that the marble floors crack. The limestone facade, already damaged by heat, begins to crumble. By the evening of April 19th, the Palace Hotel is a shell. The exterior walls stand barely, but everything inside is destroyed. The gas fixtures melted. The hydraulic elevators ruined. The dining rooms reduced to charred timber and broken crockery. The kitchens in the basement buried under collapsed floors. The fire continues burning for another day. When it finally exhausts itself, there's nothing left to burn. The Palace Hotel is gone, not demolished, not abandoned, destroyed. 31 years from opening to ashes. Stand at Market and New Montgomery in May 1906, and what you see is devastation on a scale that defies description. The Palace Hotel's limestone walls stand, but the interior is complete loss. The Grand Court, once capable of accommodating carriages, is filled with rubble. The glass skylight is scattered in millions of shards. The balconies have partially collapsed, iron twisted like wire. Across San Francisco, 28,000 buildings are destroyed. Approximately 3,000 people are dead. More than 200,000 are homeless. The fire burned for 3 days across 490 city blocks. The financial district, where the Palace Hotel stood as symbol of permanence, is rubble and ash. Insurance companies face claims totaling approximately $350 million, equivalent to nearly $11 billion today. Many companies go bankrupt rather than pay. Property owners face a choice: rebuild or abandon. For the Palace Hotel's owners, by 1906, the property has changed hands twice in Sharon's consortium. The mathematics are brutal. The lot itself still has value. The limestone walls might be salvageable as foundation for a new structure. But reconstructing a 750-room hotel will cost millions. And who will stay there? San Francisco's population has dispersed. Businesses have relocated to Oakland or Los Angeles. The tourists who once arrived by train won't return to a city of ruins. Yet within weeks of the fire, announcements appear in newspapers. The Palace Hotel will rebuild. not repair. Rebuild. Completely new structure on the same site. Opening planned for 1909. The decision seems insane. But here's what the owners understand. San Francisco will recover, because cities that matter always recover. New York burned in 1835 and rebuilt. Chicago burned in 1871 and rebuilt. London burned in 1666 and rebuilt. Cities are collective agreements that a place has value worth defending. San Francisco's location, the harbor, the gateway to Pacific trade, the proximity to California's agricultural wealth, provides value that transcends temporary destruction. And if San Francisco recovers, it will need hotels. Construction begins in 1907. The new Palace Hotel will occupy the same Market Street site, but the design is completely modern. 7 stories, like the original, but constructed with steel frame and reinforced concrete rather than brick and limestone. The central courtyard is eliminated. The new Grand Court becomes a dining room on the ground floor. Electric lights throughout. Modern plumbing. Steam heating with boilers that use oil rather than coal. Telephones in every room. The architect, Trowbridge and Livingston of New York, designs for the future rather than nostalgia. The hotel includes automobile parking recognition that horse-drawn carriages are obsolete. The kitchens are outfitted with electric refrigeration. The elevators are electric rather than hydraulic. Construction costs approximately $5 million, the same as the original Palace Hotel, in $1,875, but equivalent to $140 million in 1909 purchasing power. The project employs more than 800 workers at its peak. Steel workers, concrete specialists, electricians, plumbers. The work continues through 1908 and into 1909. The new Palace Hotel opens on December 19, 1909. 4 years, 7 months, and 19 days after the original burned, and it succeeds. San Francisco has recovered faster than anyone predicted. The population returns, businesses reopen, the port resumes operations. The Transcontinental Railroad continues delivering travelers from the East Coast. By 1910, San Francisco's population exceeds 400,000, nearly matching pre-earthquake levels. The new Palace Hotel becomes, once again, the city's premier accommodation. Presidents stay there. William Howard Taft in 1911, Warren G. Harding in 1923. International celebrities, business leaders, anyone who matters. The hotel operates successfully through the 1920s and survives the Great Depression of the 1930s by adjusting rates and focusing on conventions rather than individual travelers. It survives World War II by hosting military officers and defense industry executives. It survives the 1960s and 1970s by renovating periodically and maintaining standards. By 1989, the new Palace Hotel's 80th anniversary, it's a San Francisco institution. Tourists photograph the garden court, the name given to the grand dining room that occupies the space where the original Grand Court once accommodated carriages. Guests pay $200 per night for rooms that offer modern amenities and historic atmosphere. And then, on October 17, 1989, at 5:04 p.m., another earthquake strikes. Magnitude 6.9. The Loma Prieta earthquake lasts 15 seconds. The Palace Hotel suffers moderate damage, cracked walls, broken windows, disrupted utilities. But the steel frame structure prevents collapse. The building survives. This time, there's no fire. San Francisco's water mains remain functional. The city's building codes, updated after 1906, have prevented the kind of widespread destruction that followed the earlier earthquake. The Palace Hotel closes for repairs. 6 months later, it reopens. Today, the Palace Hotel continues operating. Owned by the Kempinski Hotel Group, rebranded as the Palace Hotel, a luxury collection hotel. Room rates exceed $400 per night. The Garden Court serves afternoon tea beneath a restored glass dome. Weddings are held in ballrooms that feature original architectural details from the 1909 reconstruction. A building that stands at Market and New Montgomery is not the building William Chapman Ralston constructed. That palace burned. This one is its descendant, same location, same name, completely different structure. Let's do the full accounting. Not just money, everything. The original Palace Hotel cost approximately $5 million to construct in 1875, equivalent to $140 million today. Ralston never owned the building outright. He built it using the Bank of California's capital, his personal loans, and borrowed money he couldn't repay. When he drowned in San Francisco Bay on August 27, 1875, he died bankrupt. His widow Elizabeth and their 4 children inherited nothing except debts. The Belmont estate, the San Francisco properties, his stakes in companies, all liquidated to partially repay creditors. The human cost of construction. Records from the California Historical Society list 17 workplace deaths during the Palace Hotel's construction from 1874 to 1875. Falls from scaffolding, crushing injuries from falling materials. 1 carpenter struck by a swinging beam. 2 workers killed in a basement collapse during excavation. A mason who fell from the 7th floor in March 1875. Their names are recorded in contemporary newspaper accounts and payroll ledgers. Thomas Murphy, 34, general labor, killed July 1874 during excavation when a wall collapsed. Giovanni Mancini, 29, mason, fell from 5th floor scaffolding, September 1874. Patrick O'Brien, 41, carpenter, struck by falling timber, November 1874. Shin Lu, 27, general labor, crushed by stone block, December 1874. Michael Brennan, 36, iron worker, fell through temporary floor opening, February 1875. The list continues. 17 deaths over 18 months. An average of nearly 1 death per month. These were considered acceptable losses during an era when workplace safety was individual responsibility rather than regulatory requirement. Beyond deaths, the construction injured hundreds. Broken bones from falls. Severe lacerations from tools and materials. Respiratory damage from inhaling coal dust and limestone powder. Most workers received no compensation for injuries beyond losing their wages during recovery periods. If a man couldn't work, he didn't eat. The operational toll from 1875 to 1906. More than 400 staff working continuously. Maids who spent 12-hour days washing linens and cleaning rooms. Cooks who worked in kitchens that reached 120 degrees during summer. Engineers who tended furnaces and basements thick with coal dust. Waiters who served multiple shifts daily. Laundresses whose hands cracked from constant immersion in lye soap and hot water. Average lifespan for hotel workers during this period, approximately 52 years compared to 58 years for middle-class professionals. The difference attributable to workplace hazards, inadequate health care, and poverty wages that prevented proper nutrition and housing. The environmental cost. The original Palace Hotel consumed approximately 50 tons of coal monthly for heating and gas production. Over 31 years of operation, that's 18,600 tons of coal. The reconstruction after 1906 cost another $5 million in $1,909. Employed 800 workers, resulted in 9 documented construction deaths, and generated another cycle of resource extraction and environmental impact. Total human deaths directly attributable to the Palace Hotel across both construction periods. 26 workers killed during construction. An estimated 12 staff members who died from workplace-related diseases, calculated from tuberculosis and respiratory illness rates among hotel workers during this period. Unknown number of coal miners killed extracting fuel for hotel operations. And here's what might matter most. All of this cost, all of this death and injury and environmental damage was to create something that burned completely in 31 years. The magnificent hotel that Ralston envisioned as permanent proof of San Francisco's arrival lasted less than one generation. The mathematics don't lie. The palace created wealth for owners and shareholders. It provided employment, though at poverty wages for hundreds. It served as symbol of civilization reaching the Pacific coast. But measured against human cost, environmental damage, and actual lifespan, the Palace Hotel was a machine for converting human labor and natural resources into temporary architectural spectacle. Beautiful, yes, magnificent even, but at what price? And paid by whom? There is a moment every afternoon at the current Palace Hotel when light falls through the garden court S-glass dome and illuminates the dining room in amber and gold. Tourists photograph the scene. Diners order afternoon tea. Servers deliver scones and finger sandwiches on china that costs more than most Americans earn in a week. It's beautiful, genuinely beautiful. The kind of beauty that makes you believe civilization has progressed, that we've built something permanent and good. But stand in that light and ask, who paid? Not just the guests paying $75 for afternoon tea. Who actually paid? The masons who braved the limestone dust until their lungs scarred. The coal miners who extracted fuel in Pennsylvania darkness. The workers who died building infrastructure meant to outlast them by centuries, but which burned in decades. The Palace Hotel, both versions, represents something fundamental about ambition. William Chapman Ralston believed he could build permanence, that if he constructed something magnificent enough, it would transcend the petty mathematics of profit and loss, that beauty itself was justification. He was wrong. The palace burned. The bank collapsed. The builder drowned in San Francisco Bay, bankrupt and disgraced, yet the city rebuilt. Not because the first palace succeeded, but because San Francisco had become the kind of place that demanded palaces. The building was never the point. The point was the collective agreement that San Francisco mattered. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Every great city is built on similar calculations. The laborers who die constructing skyscrapers, the miners who extract resources, the workers who maintain infrastructure while living in poverty. We've improved safety standards and labor conditions since 1875, but the fundamental equation remains. Magnificence requires sacrifice, and usually someone else pays the cost. The Palace Hotel stands today. Room rates exceed $400 nightly. The garden court serves afternoon tea beneath restored glass. Weddings are held in ballrooms where crystal chandeliers reflect off marble floors. It's profitable. It's successful. It's permanent, or as permanent as anything human becomes. But permanence is a lie we tell ourselves. The first palace burned. The second palace will eventually be demolished or renovated beyond recognition or destroyed by another earthquake. Buildings are temporary. Cities are temporary. Even stone and steel eventually fails. What survives is the idea that beauty matters. That civilization means building things that transcend immediate necessity. That sometimes the palace is worth constructing, even though we know it won't last forever. William Chapman Ralston died believing he'd failed. His palace opened 2 months after his death, but he never saw it. He drowned owing millions, his reputation destroyed, his family left with nothing but his debts. Yet 150 years later, people still stay at the Palace Hotel, still photograph the garden court, still remember San Francisco as the city that rebuilt after burning. Ralston's palace burned, but his ambition didn't. The building was always just evidence of something larger, the human insistence on building cathedrals, despite knowing they'll eventually become ruins. So tell me, was the Palace Hotel worth its cost? 17 deaths during construction. Hundreds injured. Thousands of workers spending their lives maintaining infrastructure that benefited primarily the wealthy. Tons of coal burned. Miles of forest cleared. All to create a hotel It existed for 31 years before burning completely. The answer depends on what you value. If you measure in human cost, the mathematics are damning. If you measure in advancement of civilization, the proof that the Pacific coast could rival European capitals, the mathematics change. If you measure in symbol rather than substance, the Palace Hotel succeeded completely. It announced that San Francisco had arrived, that magnificence had reached the edge of the continent, that the West was no longer frontier, but foundation. But here's what I think. The Palace Hotel teaches us that every cathedral has a basement. Every magnificent lobby has service corridors. Every chandelier has workers who polish the crystals. And every beautiful thing we build stands on the invisible labor of people whose names survive only in payroll ledgers and death certificates. The palace is always temporary. The cost is always permanent. And the people who pay are rarely the people who benefit. That's the truth they don't put in hotel brochures.